So today we are looking for agatized coral, but this location seems to have more kind of like a fossil-rich, cherty, agate material, where it's a mix of chert and agate with bits of fossils sprinkled in. Folks, I apologize if it's windy, but I'm here at a little beach or causeway area that is rumored to have some agatized coral. So that's my goal today, is to, you can see the rocky beach, just go through there and look for agate. And you can actually see in the rock, it's a phosphoriferous limestone, so it's got a bunch of fossilized shells and stuff in there. But the goal is to find, of course, agatized coral, or I've heard that you can also find some agatized shell here. But we're gonna just start walking this. I did I did find these kind of in the thing. I think this is just quartzite, but they kind of glowed kind of like agate, but I think it's quartzite, or maybe some calcite. But I'll show you folks if I find anything interesting. And without further ado, let's go get to agate hunting. So here's what I found so far. Now, first I was finding this kind of material with this kind of root beer. Almost reminds me of like a high quality chert. And then I found this piece that looked a lot more promising, like clearer bits and some interesting colors. This one got a little kind of like opaque. And then I found this lovely fragment. I don't know if you can see the faint banding in it, but this is for sure some agate. And then I found what I believe is a chunk of petrified wood, which is pretty cool. And then looking at the pictures of what people have found before here, I believe this could be a finger of coral, and it might have some agate inside. This is kind of the shape you're looking for if you're looking for the whole pieces to cut. But of course I won't know until I cut it open if it is. And then I found some seashells. These two are kind of weathered, but these are nice and fresh. I don't know the species. I used to collect a lot of shells when I was younger. When we lived back in Indonesia, we were close to beaches and often go on vacation to like beaches and like snorkel resorts and stuff. So I got to do a lot of shelling then, but not anymore. But I found these quite pleasing, so I'm gonna take at least these two back home. I have to say the seaweed makes this beach quite smelly. So if you do plan to come here, just beware of the smell. And actually, in fact, I walked right by what I believe was like a third of an eaten shark, basically. Actually, in fact, I'll show you guys right now. Just content warning for those who are queasy. Here we have that partial shark. It's been chewed up real bad. So I've stopped to take a break. I'll put some of the stuff I found down over there, and then in the corner of my eye I spotted this thing. And this guy's got some botuoidal formations. Which is pretty cool. So this gray root beer stuff, I guess, is also agate. So that's a cool confirmation. And I also found this piece. I believe it's fossilized coral. It's quite heavy, but I think it's calcite instead. So it's like a calcified coral instead of a agatized coral. And we've got some fragments of agate. And then this interesting piece that has something there. So I think I'm taking that home. So the tide's coming in. I think high tide is around like 12:30. And I found a couple more pieces. Some fingers of corals, I think. This one looks like it might just be calcified. This one, I don't know. There might be something in the middle. This just felt promising. I don't know why. Got some more. I think this is calcified coral, but I thought I'd show you the kind of the internal structures. It's kind of cool, even though it's kind of covered in a lot of algae. That'll probably just toss right back into the water. And we've got some more chunks of the root beer colored material. This piece has got some little tiny botuolidal formations, little pockets of box. Just more cool coloration. But yeah, the high tide is coming in, and then I think low tide, the next low tide. Yeah, I think high tide's coming in, and the next low tide is going to be, I think around 7 o'clock is the next low tide. I saw this just sticking out, so I started digging it out. And it seems like it's quite big, but I just wanted to show you guys before I dug it out what I saw, kind of. And I also found this piece. Check out that nice pocket of fortification banding. And this one's got some little seashells in there too, I think. Some agatized seashells. Well, it's a good thing I dug this up, because check out this chonker. Especially on the back. Look at those. Found a couple more big chunks. Kind of like a seam-like piece, and then this piece has just got some nice oranges and patterns in it. So another piece that I dug out of the sand. That seems where the bigger chunks seem to be buried still, which makes sense. But very cool. I don't know what to call this stuff. I don't know if it's agatized coral or if it's like a jasp agate or a chert. I'm not 100% sure on this material. I'll have to do some asking around, ask the locals, and to try and figure that out. I think I'm going to go across the street and grab some food and then make my way back to my vehicle slowly. Now let's look at some of the material cleaned up and tumbled and polished, or partially polished. I'm working on a couple pieces that I'm polishing, putting a face polish to, but then I had a bunch of material that I threw in the tumbler as well. So let's look at this interesting material. So my main goal was to look for agatized coral on this trip, and I didn't find exactly the type of agatized coral that I thought I might be there. There was some scarce information on this location, and they just said, oh yeah, you can sometimes find agatized coral. And I thought it was like maybe the classic kind of large, bubbly botuolidal agatized coral. I'll show you an example, because I eventually did actually end up finding one in a thrift store, of all places. But I did find a couple pieces with some agatized coral on here. Here you can see a nice little coral, and on the end of it you can see there's some nice little faint white fortification bands in there. You can see there's other fossils in here. There was a bunch of shell material in here, and some of it has some agatized bits to it. For example, here are some nice agatized. You can see the nice fortifications. The agate in this chert seems to, as it's exposed to the weather, kind of bleach, and actually that enhances the fortifications. Else it's kind of like just this dark see-through material, or faint white opaline material that the fortifications are not too strong in. But as you can see, there are multiple sections where there are coral bits sticking out, some fossilized shell bits. Another coral bit there. There's a bit of an impression of a coral here. So I did end up finding agatized coral, just not what I was expecting. But this material is pretty cool. This is a bit closer to what I was expecting, kind of a botryoidal cavity of agate. There's like a light druze on this piece. So this is still not what I would consider the classic coral. I found this right at the end when it's super windy, so I just like couldn't make a good video out of it. It came off of a bigger piece, and you can see on the back end, it's hard to tell. The camera doesn't pick them up, but there's some really faint banding in this white opaly material. But again, not the classic stuff, but did end up finding agate. Now the material that I tumbled pretty well. Obviously the outer kind of more limestoney material didn't take as good of a polish, but some of this material is quite glassy. You can kind of see how it kind of blurs the lines between like an agate and a chert, but most of this material I believe is just like a cherty material. And then once in a while you'll get really, it's hard to see with the plain eye, but there are some sections that have very faint bands, like actual fortifications. So it's hard to see, but that does exist. For example, this is a cross section of what I believe to be a coral polyp. And you can just see on the inside the bands are a little more distinct, but as they go to the outside, it just looks like clear black chalcedony. And then you get this more opaque cherty material at the bottom with some smattering of more chalcedony. And interestingly enough, on the back, where the coral polyp would continue, we get this softer opaly material, which actually undercut because it was in the tumbler. And we've got a couple more spots, and then another kind of agatized spot. You can see it's very hard to tell, but there are some faint bands in there as well. Probably the most obvious agate piece that I found was this piece, kind of a peachy orangey fragment. And you can see that the fortification bands have been kind of bleached on the ends, so they're a bit more obvious. But I was hoping to find more of this material, but I didn't find too much. I actually found this pretty early on, so it gave me hope, and it kept me going. But unfortunately, we didn't find more of this material. This is like the only fragment of this stuff specifically. And I think it's just because that area, the material, from what I understand, it's actually brought in. It was brought in to kind of build up the causeway. So it's not natural there. It's from another location. So for folks who are familiar with that area, please let me know if you know where this material actually came from. I assume some type of quarry where they dug out the limestone with the chert in it, and it's just some of the chert has some agate mixed in as well. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this material. It polished up well, and it produced some very cool looking pieces. A nice mirror finish. Along with the chert and agate material, I did find some seashells that I took home with me. Most of them are modern pieces. Don't remember all the names, but I'll point to these and then throw up the names. But this one on the end here is actually fossilized. And you ask, how can you tell that it's fossilized versus just a sun-bleached shell? Well, using this shell as a comparison, you can tell that this shell is a bit bigger than this one, but this maybe a little bit thinner, but similar thickness. But when I hold this shell and I compare it to this shell by weight, this shell is noticeably heavier. It's been fossilized, so it's been mineralized. The shell has been mineralized and replaced by minerals, whereas this is the original makeup of the shell. And just this natural shell material is a lot lighter than the minerals that replace the shell when it gets fossilized. I'll throw up the name for this fossil as well. I do have a couple in my collection. A A couple years ago, a club member from a mineral club I'm part of brought back a bunch from a Florida trip and gave them away at a club meeting that I went to. But yeah, this was a cool little fossilized shell find. Here's that thing here's this material that I thought was maybe petrified wood. Looking at it now, I think it's more likely that it's actually just some fossilized bone, probably like dugong bone. That's pretty common for fossilized bone in Florida. The textures on the material seem to be more like bone and not like wood, which is okay. It's a shame that it's not wood, but that's okay. Can't win them all. I mentioned that I have a couple pieces that I'm putting a polished face to. This is one of those pieces. It's got some really interesting features. It's got some like really faint botryoidal kind of formations here. Almost reminds me of this material that people call beakite, which is just a kind of this bubbly chalcedony that you can sometimes find on fossils. And you can see here's the face that I'm working in. And then on this end, you can actually see that there is an impression of a coral. You can see where the polyps would be and stuff. But it's just the negative impression, I believe is the term, of the coral. And it's just been lightly agatized. And then on this end, you get some lovely sections of bleached agate fortifications. But then if I turn it over and show you this section, which is also agate, you can see the fortifications are very faint to not even noticeable. And that's a bit annoying, but hey, what can you do? This piece is still quite cool. It's chock full of fossily bits and agatized fortifications, and there's some pockets with botryoidal formations, so it's a cool little piece. This piece is the opposite end of that tumbled piece that I showed the circular coral section in. You can see here's that coral section, and once again the banding is very faint in the middle, and then once you get to the outside it's not even noticeable. But this is what this material looks like when it's weathered. This stuff obviously had some iron in the limestone, so it stained the outside nice and orange, and there is some faint kind of orange staining on the inside, which kind of gives it like a yellowish green tint to the chert. Before we get to the end, I thought I'd also show you that agatized coral piece that I mentioned I found in a thrift store. Got this one for 80 bucks. I think I did pretty good, all things considered. This was what I was hoping to find, but obviously that location does not have this material. I believe the actual source of this stuff is farther north on the east side of Florida. There's a specific river, and it's quite hard to get information on good sites to collect. This material is kind of ballooned in cost, so people kind of hoard their locations. So it's hard to, find connections that are willing to let a rockhound like me just go and collect for a day. I think some of the best spots you actually have to go snorkel in the local rivers for, though I have seen videos of people pulling them off of what look to be like construction sites or just local gravel roads. But yeah, this is kind of the classic agatized coral when you speak of agatized coral from Florida. But this brings us to the end of the video. Please do let me know what you found the most interesting. I do appreciate your folks' feedback. Please also, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And thank you folks for watching. Please just have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next video.